Are you wanting to learn how to be more strategic in planning for your organization and utilize some of the futurist models that people like I use all the time? If so, I'm going to share our secrets with you today. Stay tuned. We'll learn the first step to thinking like a futurist by looking around you. We'll discover how and where you can research to get the information you need to make more strategic decisions. And lastly, we're going to talk about how you can get started today influencing the future. Hope you're ready. Let's get going. So let's start with that first thing we talked about, which is looking around you. And that's something that we call trend analysis and horizon scanning. What you're simply doing is you're looking around you for trends, and not just those trends in your industry or that would seem to impact your business immediately, but you want to start looking a little further out at trends that are happening in what I call sister organizations or sister industries that might bleed their way over, maybe into some of the industries that you have a partnership with or that are involved in your supply chain. Start looking at some of the things that are happening in those industries because it could impact your business. So where do you look for this information? It's very easy for me to say, go out and find some trends. You want to look at diverse magazines. You want to look at different industry periodicals. So you might subscribe to a few different industries. So let's say that you're in home services. You might actually be investing in some publications that are part of commercial farming, understanding that a lot of their technology trickles down into your own industry a few years later. You may even want to go to social media. Oftentimes there's pages, there's communities, there's groups where people within other industries are sharing some of the things that they're seeing. Again, yes, you want to be on top of trends in your industry, but you also want to cast a little bit of a wider net and look at some of the other trends that are happening around you, because it's only a matter of time before many of them start to trickle into the work that you do. One of the things that I want to empower you to do, in addition to just looking for trends, is to also start doing a little bit of horizon scanning where you're looking for signals. Signals are things that are a little weaker than trends, so they're not going to be on a trends list yet, but you just notice something. Maybe you're noticing that when you go to the grocery store on Tuesdays, all of a sudden it's empty the past few weeks. That's a signal. It may not be a trend that means anything yet, but it's a signal. I'm giving you an example in our everyday life, but you might notice things in your industry or things that are happening around you where you're like, that's interesting. That's fascinating. And you list it down. Maybe you have a place where you keep all this information. You might use something like OneNote or Evernote or whatever technology you want to keep it. But as you notice little signals and little trends, just kind of collect them someplace. I use Evernote because I can easily share articles right there. OneNote does the exact same thing. There's many different technologies that'll help you accomplish that goal. But you want to make sure that you're keeping track of what's happening around you, because that's going to help you be more strategic in your decision making. Now that you've been gathering both trends and signals, one of the things that you want to do is ensure that you're filtering. Sometimes we can see that things are fads, and other times we know that they're probably going to develop into more of a long-term trend. And it's a little hard to depend on ourselves to know the difference because sometimes our biases get in the way. Maybe we don't like a thing, so we think it's stupid because we don't understand it. We kind of have to become a little bit better at knowing ourselves so that we can tell if we're actually analyzing and seeing, does this have a use case, or is this likely something that is a fad? Oftentimes in technology, there's a lot of extremely useful technologies that start off as a fad, go away, and then come back later and become a trend. Two examples would first be the visual phone, which was actually invented in the 1960s. Many of us who were around in the 1990s remember that companies were still trying to push that. Everybody's like, ugh, I don't want to have people call me and I'm in my rollers or people looking at me. That's weird. It was only once most of us started to get these mobile devices that things like FaceTime and Google Duo and all those different types of technologies, now it became neat because we have these portable phones. We have these mobile devices. Another example is QR codes. These are something, I'm not saying they weren't useful, but before they were built into our phone cameras, we were kind of like, do I want to download apps to read this? It seemed a little fatty. But then after COVID hit and touch-free became the law of the land, especially when it came to ordering from restaurants and places like that, all of a sudden, QR codes are incredible. They're a gift to humanity, right? So again, follow the trends, understand when something's likely to be a fad, and some fads go away completely, and then some of them, they might be there for the long haul. So we have to be a little open to how we're considering uses. And we have to get over our own biases as well. The next step to thinking like a futurist is scenario planning. What you want to do is you want to develop maybe 2 to 3 alternative scenarios based on these trends and signals that you have been collecting. Are you seeing trends and signals that are saying that the way supply chains are working now will not work the same in the future? Maybe you're seeing trends that are saying you might have to innovate based on certain types of technology. Maybe 50% of your workforce will be automated out of their jobs in your industry because of artificial intelligence. Whatever trends you're seeing, create alternative scenarios based on that. So what you want to do is you create the scenario. For instance, let's say that there's another global pandemic in 2027. I'm not saying any of us want that, right? But let's say that's one of the scenarios. Okay, now that we've said what that scenario is, let's do a SWOT analysis. We want to look at our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats in that particular situation. We want to look at how that particular scenario will impact our business and our industry and our customers. You're writing all these things out. It's not a mental exercise. And then based on how it's impacting them, based on what your strengths and weaknesses are, you want to develop maybe 3 to 4 possible things that you can do now that would prepare you for that future. And here's the kicker. You want to do this 2 to 3 times. So you want to draw out 2 to 3 alternative scenarios that you want to be prepared for that could happen. Not saying we want them to happen, but they could happen. This is what futurists do. Now, if you want to take it up a notch, you take those 2 to 3 other scenarios and those solutions you develop, see if any of those solutions work for the other scenarios. Any solutions that work for 2 to 3 of the other scenarios, guess what? Your organization should probably focus on doing those because they would probably help you in many different future scenarios. So that would actually help you be more future-proof. So now's the fun part. You're looking at your different scenarios, you've gathered your trends and everything. Now you want to do something called future visioning. And that's basically where you get to imagine the kind of future that you want. And it might sound kind of like a little fuzzy, warm, huggy exercise, but it's not. It's very intentional. So you want to bring your stakeholders together. You want to bring in team members. You want to bring in leadership. You might want to even bring in investors. Have them around a table and discussing, how do you want your organization to operate in the future? What is the most positive future that you can draw out where all of your stakeholders are benefiting from your actions, as well as your community as well? And there are organizations that bring in their communities in these types of talks as well. And so you start to map out what you want the future to look like. Now, mind you, you've already done the scenario planning. You're going to put some new things into place based on those strengths that you found and some of the solutions. But now we're actually starting to envision our future. And even if these alternative scenarios happen, we're envisioning how we can draw the best possible future towards us. I have a question for you. When was the last time that you allowed yourself to personally envision the kind of future that you want? Maybe you were daydreaming, maybe you were journaling and writing down your ideal future. This is an activity that I did in 2012. I'll never forget this. I was still newer in business. I had my marketing business at the time. And I remember sitting down and writing out what I wanted myself to be like in the future and what I wanted my life to be like. So it's kind of like vision boarding, but on paper, and what I wanted my business to be like and all these different things. And what's fascinating is that at the time that I wrote this, it was such a jump for me to achieve these things. Now, at this point in time, I've actually achieved every single thing as described there, as has my business. So visioning can be extremely powerful. But go ahead in the comment section and write down, how do you like to vision? Do you have a journal where you write your ideas? Do you use vision boards? Maybe you've seen some of my other videos on vision boards. How do you map out and envision your future? Go ahead and share that right now. So now it's time to formulate your strategy. You've looked at the trends and signals. You've done scenario planning. You've visioned with your group. Now's the time where you start to figure out which one of those items you're going to put in place and how you're going to do it. Who's in charge of what? What is the timeline? We want to start making all of these activities where we're using our imagination and our observation skills and turning it into something that is a real plan that we can follow. When you create this strategy, you want to create something called a pestle analysis, which helps you analyze political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal items that could influence how your plan is put into place. So we don't think that everything just lives in a bubble. We do want to actually look at our environment as well and how it might impact us. We want to design KPIs, key performance indicators, that let us know how we're doing at implementing our strategies as we're trying to create change that makes us more sustainable. The last thing that we want to do is, after we do all of these things and we're putting into practice these new innovations that we've created, is we want to constantly monitor and measure. So the good thing is, if we develop KPIs, we can measure if we're hitting those key performance indicators. Those are based on numbers typically. And then when it comes to monitoring, maybe you have to tweak your plan a little bit. That's okay. That just makes us agile, right? It makes us a little bit more flexible. But speaking of being agile and flexible, if you're watching this video, obviously you are interested in thinking like a future. I mentioned a couple of things in this video, from scenario planning to pestle analysis to SWOT analysis. You're going to notice something. In the description of this video, there's a link to download a Future Ready Playbook. There are actually worksheets that I already designed for you that will walk you through those exercises, and it's included in this playbook. If you haven't already downloaded it and you're ready to get started thinking like a futurist, go ahead and take a few minutes today.